Good morning, sixth grade. This week is the final week of going through chapter 11 before our test next week. We are translating the story this week, so a lot to do. And it's going to be a lot different than what we're used to because we don't get to be in class together, unfortunately, to translate all of this. Where we can kind of work together and ask questions. You're going to be working on it at home, and that's going to be different and tough. But what I was thinking is this is really a time for you to take off your translating training wheels because you get to work on something on your own and really test out all that you've learned. So going through Philemon and Baucis part 1, I'm going to walk you through as much as I can in this video, and then you're going to be doing a lot of the work really on your own, and then we're going to work through it later. And so on the Zoom call, you can ask questions. Later through the week, you can email and ask questions. I can set up an additional time to work with you to kind of check through your work. I can do everything I can to make sure that we're all working through this on the same page. And at the end of the week, or again next week, we can review it at your Zoom call. We can get ready for the test. But this is going to be new because this is a big piece of Latin that you're doing on your own. And you guys have done a lot of practice, and I think you're ready. And I'm going to do the best I can to set you up for success in that. And we're going to be able to translate your first story kind of on your own without training wheels, like I said. So in this video, I'm going to be walking you through as much as I can. I'm going to do another reading of the story, and then we're going to start going through some sentences that might seem a little bit tricky, but you've done this before. You know how to do this, and you totally can do it. And I'll be here to answer any questions, like I said. And at the end of all this, we'll go through it all and double check and make sure we make all the corrections before we get to our test time. So now that we've gotten all set up and you know what we're doing, let's get going. Here I want you to get your notebooks ready. I have here kind of an example of what your notebook would look like. This is the notebook I'm working from. Remember, when we're translating these stories, you can skip lines like I've done, or you can put all the English on one page and all the Latin on the other, whichever is easier for you. Just get your notebook and something to write with ready, because we're going to start walking through a little bit of how to start translating the story. So once you have all of that, I'm going to walk through the very beginning of the story. This is the first paragraph I have written here, which, interestingly, for this story, the first paragraph is basically half of the story. So when we get started in the first sentence, we're going to look at what we're dealing with here. So we find our verbs first. That's est, so we mark that. There's also a second verb in this sentence, habet. So we've got both of those to work with here. We know est is pretty simple. That's just he, she, or it is. So let's just go ahead and note that down, that's what we're working with. And then habet, we actually know is he, she, or it has. And so we know that the it we're talking about is back up here. The subject's at the beginning. But we're going to hold on to that verb and deal with it later. So the subject we're dealing with here is potentia Kylie. That's the power of something, because Kylie is in the genitive. So of the sky or of the heavens is kind of what we're talking about here. The story is setting up talking about the power of the gods and goddesses, and it describes it as immensa, which we know means immense. So the power of the sky is immense, and we've got an et there. Now we're bringing in that second verb, habet. So we know habet is referring to the power of the sky. So the subject there really is it. So it does not, because it's negated here, there's a non, it does not have. Phinem is what we're talking about. The power of heavens does not have phinem, meaning end. So this first sentence is really saying that the power of the sky is huge. It has no end. The second sentence here, I'm not going to go through all of this paragraph, but the second sentence here, let's look for our verbs. Imperant, so that's the verb we're dealing with in the first sentence. And D here, that's an alternate form of the word for gods. So this one's pretty simple. Quicquid is just a vocab word from this chapter, meaning whatever. And then that alternate form of gods, whatever the gods. Imperant is a verb here. It's in the they form, so it can mean multiple things. I choose to write command, but remember, this can mean bid, order, command. Whatever the gods are commanding, you can use whatever word you want here. Factum est, that's a second verb. Est just being is, and then factum is a vocab word from this chapter just meaning done. So whatever the God's command is done. And then this next sentence I want to go through real quick just because it's got a concept in here that you might have forgotten. So discipuli, means students. That's a word that you're pretty familiar with. But this verb at the front end of this sentence, I just want to pay attention to here because see this ne at the end? Remember, that's the enclitic that tells us something is a question. So there's also a question mark here, so that might have helped. But dubitasne is a verb we're dealing with here, with that ne being a question. And so that is ending is the you ending. That's the second person ending. So we're talking to you. So our author is talking to you, the students. And it's a question of doubting. So they're essentially saying, do you doubt, students? So our storyteller is asking you if you doubt the power of the gods or the power of the heavens here. They're kind of adding this element in of saying, like, do you trust that what I'm saying is true? Because the power is strong. These things I'm circling here, I wanted to point out, there's footnotes in our chapter. And so when you're translating, anytime there's a footnote, there's a lot actually in this first paragraph. Those are at the bottom of the page in your textbook, and those are little helpers. Those will tell you sometimes exactly what to put here if our author thinks there's something here that you don't know. So make sure you're remembering where those are and you're paying attention to those, because those are big help. Sometimes those are words it hasn't taught you, and sometimes it's just background information, but overall they're really important. So anytime you see a footnote, make sure you pay attention to that. Also, I want to point out simulaverant. This is a phrase right here. I'm not going to, like I said, translate it all for you, but this is something we've actually seen before when the gods are taking the form of men in this case. But we've seen it before where gods and goddesses have simulaverant, imitated or taken the form of humans. And so I just wanted to point that one out because that's a structure, a storytelling structure we've seen in some of the stories already. And it's repeated here. And then lastly, I really just wanted to do this last sentence of the first paragraph with you because, frankly, I just really like it. I think it's kind of an interesting thing and it sets up what's to come. So if we look here at our verb, rogabant, and then rogabant is the subject is built in, and the subject is referring back to that previous sentence actually. So we're talking about the gods. So our subject here is they. And rogo means ask, seek, or beg. So they, being the gods, asked for requiem, rest. They're looking for rest, these gods that are imitating the form of men. And I just think this is so funny because it tells us they looked for rest in 1,000 houses. Mille casis, 1,000 houses. So they knocked on 1,000 doors. But 1,000 houses, it repeats it again. They looked for rest in 1,000 houses, but 1,000 houses, and then erant here, that's our verb, aram, aras, arat, aramus, aratis, erant. 1,000 houses were closed. All 1,000 houses were closed for them. This is crazy. Lastly, I just want to give you a second to look over what we've done in this video, and then keep going, keep translating. You've got the rest to do on your own, so good luck. Awesome. So we did it. I know that was a lot and you got a lot still ahead of you to go through it, but you can do this. I'll be here and you'll be so proud of yourself when you look back and say, look what I did all on my own. I translated this story. And that's really what we're doing here. That's part of the reason we're learning this is so that we can read these original stories in their original language. You get to make a unique, different, independent translation that is yours, that you have said, I read this story in Latin and I translated it into English and this is what it says. I learned. We're not reading what somebody else thinks it should be translated as. It's your own independent, unique, special work. And that's really great and cool. And this is a really great story to be able to really test out your skills on, because this is just such a fun one to read. It's got a lot of elements to it. And so great job. Keep working, keep trying. If it gets hard, don't worry. I'm here to help. You guys can ask each other. You're here to help. This is really this is learning. This is fun. This is expressing all that we have learned. This is demonstrating all the skills that we have. This is what all of this is about, is reading and translating these stories. from the original language with the skills that you've built. So you're doing great. Like I said, if you get nervous, if you get stressed, try not to be. This is just learning. This is what we're doing. This is learning Latin, and you're doing great. And so I hope to see you guys soon on the live Zoom call, and I am totally here to answer any questions that you have as you keep working. So you're doing great. Keep trying, and we're gonna have a great time.